I've always been a night runner. It started in college when the only time I could squeeze in a workout was after midnight. Something about the emptiness of the streets, the cool air on my skin, and the distant hum of a sleeping city gave me a weird sense of peace. But after what happened last week, I don't think I'll ever run at night again. It started like any other night. It was around 11:30 p.m., and I had just finished a long shift at work. My head was buzzing, my body stiff from sitting too long, so I threw on my running gear, laced up my sneakers, and hit the pavement. I live in a suburban area outside Chicago, nothing too fancy, just rows of old houses with dim porch lights and empty sidewalks. At night, it always had this eerie stillness, like the world had paused, waiting for something to happen. The first few blocks were uneventful. I passed by a gas station, its flickering neon sign humming in the silence, and a 24-hour laundromat with a single tired-looking guy folding his clothes. Everything was as usual until I reached the park. That's when I noticed him. At first, I barely paid attention. Just another late-night jogger. He was maybe 50 feet behind me, keeping a steady pace. I remember thinking it was a little odd, most people don't run this late, and those who do usually have headphones on, lost in their own world. But he had no music, no phone, nothing. Just a dark hoodie, black running pants, and a stride that matched mine step for step. I picked up my pace, just to see if he was really keeping up. He did. I tried not to be paranoid. Maybe he was just another guy like me, blowing off steam with a late-night run. But my gut told me something was wrong. I cut right, heading down a side street. He followed. I slowed down, letting my breath even out, hoping he'd pass me. He didn't. My chest tightened. The sound of his footsteps matched mine exactly, always the same distance behind me. Not gaining, not falling back. I was running faster now, my breath sharp, my heart pounding in my ears. The neighborhood felt different, the houses darker, the streets narrower. I glanced over my shoulder. He was still there. I turned down another street, empty, except for a row of abandoned warehouses. I hadn't meant to go this way, but my panic had taken over. The dim streetlights barely lit the cracked pavement, and the buildings loomed over me like hollow skeletons. Then, I stopped. I don't even know why. Maybe to test him. Maybe to finally confirm what my gut was screaming at me. And that's when I saw it. The moment I stopped, he started running. Not jogging. Running. Full speed. Straight at me. My stomach dropped. Every hair on my body stood on end. It was like something out of a nightmare, the kind where you try to move but your legs won't work. But mine did. I bolted. The air burned in my lungs as I sprinted, my feet slamming against the pavement. I could hear him behind me, his footsteps growing louder. Closer. I darted into an alley, barely missing a pile of broken pallets. There was a rusted chain-link fence ahead, maybe 7 feet tall. No time to think. I jumped, clawing at the metal, my arms burning as I scrambled over. I hit the ground hard on the other side, rolling onto my back. My vision blurred, but I saw him. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed the fence and started climbing. I didn't wait. I pushed myself up and ran, my legs shaking, my breath ragged. I needed somewhere to hide. Somewhere to disappear. Then I saw it, a half-open door in one of the warehouses. Without thinking, I dove inside. The second I slipped into the warehouse, I slammed my back against the cold metal wall, gasping for air. My hands were trembling so bad I had to press them against my knees to steady myself. My chest felt like it was going to explode. Outside, I could still hear his footsteps, fast, deliberate. He was getting closer. I barely had time to think. I scanned the space around me. The warehouse was massive, hollowed out, and rotting from the inside. Moonlight seeped through shattered skylights above, casting broken patches of light on the dust-covered floor. Rows of rusted metal shelves stretched into the darkness, some collapsed, others leaning at precarious angles. It smelled like damp concrete, mildew, and something faintly metallic, blood, maybe. I swallowed hard. No time to focus on that. The entrance door groaned as it swung wider. I froze. He was here. I crouched low behind a stack of wooden crates, forcing myself to control my breathing. My whole body felt wired, every nerve on edge. Then, footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. He wasn't running anymore. He was searching. I peeked between two crates, and for the first time, I saw him up close. The dim light made it hard to see his face, but what I could see was wrong. His hood was still up, but there was something off about the way his head tilted, like he wasn't used to moving like a normal person. His breath was slow, measured, not like someone who had just been sprinting full speed. Then I saw his hands. Long fingers. Too long. And his nails, they were jagged, uneven, like they'd been torn instead of cut. I clenched my jaw to keep from making a sound. He moved deeper into the warehouse, his head turning side to side, scanning. He was listening. I couldn't stay here. If I waited too long, he'd find me. I had to move. Keeping low, I crept toward the back of the warehouse. The floor was covered in debris, broken glass, scraps of wood, rusted nails. Every step felt like a gamble. One wrong move, one noise, and I was dead. I reached a doorway leading into another section of the building. A long hallway stretched into darkness, with smaller rooms on either side. Offices, maybe. A place to hide. Then, crash. A metal pipe hit the floor behind me. I spun around. He was standing at the center of the warehouse, perfectly still. He had knocked it over on purpose. Testing me. Seeing if I'd react. My blood ran cold. I backed into the hallway, stepping as lightly as I could. My only hope was that the darkness would hide me. Then, another sound. Not from him. From inside one of the rooms. A quiet, shuffling noise. I wasn't alone that I froze. The shuffle came from one of the rooms ahead. My stomach twisted, was someone else in here? My first instinct was hope. Maybe it was another person hiding. Maybe I wasn't alone in this nightmare. But that hope vanished fast. The sound wasn't normal. It wasn't footsteps. It was dragging. A slow, uneven scrape against the floor, like something being pulled. I pressed my back against the wall, my pulse hammering in my throat. I could still hear him in the warehouse, but he wasn't moving. He was listening. Waiting. I forced myself to breathe quietly. I had two choices, go back toward him or move deeper into the hallway where that other sound had come from. Neither felt like survival. Then, another shuffle. Closer this time. I inched forward, trying to see inside the room without making a sound. The door was half open, and inside, the darkness was thick, swallowing everything except a small sliver of moonlight cutting across the floor. And in that sliver, I saw something that made my whole body go cold. A hand. Not reaching for me. Not moving. Just lying there on the filthy floor. Pale. Still. I swallowed, stepping closer, my body tense and ready to run. I leaned in just enough to see inside. It was a man. Face down. Motionless. For a split second, I thought he was dead. Then I saw his back rise, shallow, uneven breaths. He was alive. Barely. I should have helped him. That's what a good person would do. But my body wouldn't move. My instincts were screaming at me to get out. Then, from the dark corner of the room, another noise. A sharp inhale. Like someone sucking in air through their teeth. I didn't stay to see what it was. I spun on my heel and ran. Footsteps thundered behind me, fast, heavy, not the slow, measured pace from before. I didn't dare look back. I barreled through the hallway, past rusted filing cabinets and shattered glass. The air felt thicker, the walls pressing in. I reached another door and shoved through it, stumbling into a massive loading bay. Then I heard it. Not footsteps. Laughter. Low. Breathless. Coming from the hallway I had just escaped. Not a deep, booming laugh. No. This was worse. It was quiet, broken, like someone laughing through clenched teeth. I backed away, my hands shaking. Then, from the shadows of the hallway, a voice. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just, wrong. Why'd you run? I turned and ran again. That I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just ran. The loading bay stretched out in front of me, a massive, open space filled with rusted machinery and shattered wooden pallets. The walls were lined with old metal doors, some dented, some hanging off their hinges. Cold air seeped in from broken windows high above, carrying the faint stench of oil and something rotten. I darted between a row of abandoned forklifts, my heart hammering against my ribs. Every muscle in my body screamed to keep moving, but my mind was spinning. What the hell was that? The voice. The laughter. The man on the floor. And the worst part, he was still behind me. I couldn't hear his footsteps, but I knew he was there. Watching. Waiting. I reached the far end of the bay, my hands fumbling for something, anything, I could use. A door. A weapon. A way out. Then, in the corner of my vision, movement. Not from behind me. From above. I barely had time to react before something dropped from the rafters. A figure hit the ground hard, just 10 feet ahead. My breath caught in my throat. It was him. He landed in a crouch, perfectly still for a second. Then, slowly, he straightened. The dim light caught his face for the first time. My stomach twisted. It wasn't right. His features were human, but not. His skin was too pale, almost gray, stretched too tight over sharp cheekbones. His eyes were too wide, too dark, like twin pits in his face. And his mouth, Jesus. His lips were cracked, split in places, and curled in a grin that didn't reach his eyes. He tilted his head, his neck popping unnaturally. Then he took a step forward. I bolted. I didn't care where I was going, I just needed to get away. My legs burned, my chest ached, but I pushed forward, weaving through the maze of broken crates and rusted equipment. Behind me, I heard something worse than footsteps. Breathing. Deep. Raspy. Too close. I tore past an old loading dock and spotted another hallway, a narrow passage lined with lockers and broken light fixtures. Without thinking, I dove inside. Bad move. The second I was in, I knew I'd trapped myself. The hallway was long, but it had no exits, just rows of rusted lockers and a single, dead-end storage room at the very back. I skidded to a stop, my stomach twisting. Then, behind me, footsteps. Slow. Heavy. He was walking now. Taking his time. I turned, my back pressed against the cold concrete wall. He stepped into the hallway, blocking the exit. For the first time, I noticed something in his hand. A knife. Long, jagged. Not clean. His grin widened. My body went ice cold. I was trapped that I pressed myself against the wall, my breath coming in short, shallow bursts. My legs ached, my throat was dry, but none of that mattered. I was trapped. He stood at the entrance of the hallway, blocking my only way out. The dim light cast shadows across his face, stretching that awful, unnatural grin. The knife in his hand gleamed, the blade chipped, uneven, like it had been used too much. He didn't lunge. He didn't rush me. He just stood there, tilting his head slightly, like he was waiting for something. Then he did something that made my stomach drop. He flicked the knife upward, tapping the tip against his own teeth. Tink. 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 Slow. Deliberate. Like he was savoring this. I had to move. Now. My eyes darted around the hallway. There had to be a way out. A vent. A loose panel. Something. There was nothing. Just rows of rusted lockers, some barely hanging on their hinges, and a single storage room at the end of the hall. Not an escape. A dead end. But if I stayed here, I was dead anyway. I sucked in a sharp breath and ran. His footsteps thundered behind me. I could feel him closing the distance, his presence like a shadow breathing down my neck. The hallway blurred around me, my vision tunneling toward the storage room door. 10 feet. 5. I threw myself forward, gripping the rusted handle and yanking it open. The hinges screamed in protest, the old metal groaning as I stumbled inside. Darkness swallowed me. I spun around just in time to slam the door shut. Bang! Something hit the other side, hard. I braced my weight against it, my whole body shaking. The door rattled again. Another bang. Then, silence. My breathing was ragged, my pulse hammering in my ears. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to think. I wasn't safe. Not yet. I had to find a way out. I turned. The storage room was small, barely big enough for a few rusted shelves and a broken desk. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of something rotting clung to the walls. Then my eyes landed on the worst thing I could have seen. At the back of the room, just barely visible in the dark. A pile of clothes. Shoes. A phone with a shattered screen. Someone had been here before me. And they hadn't made it out. I felt him before I heard him. A shift in the air. A slow, deliberate inhale from the other side of the door. Then. Tap. 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 Knuckles rapping softly against the wood. Then his voice. Low. Amused. Wrong. You're not very good at this game, are you? The tapping stopped, and for a moment, I was paralyzed by the suffocating silence. My heartbeat roared in my ears, drowning out every other sound. I could feel the cold sweat on my back, my legs trembling beneath me. My mind raced in a million different directions, trying to come up with an escape, trying to come up with anything that could keep me alive. But there was nothing. I was locked in a room with a man who, no, I didn't even know if he was a man anymore. I pressed myself flat against the door, trying to make myself invisible, as if that would somehow help. But I could hear him, on the other side, breathing. Slow. Methodical. He was waiting. Waiting for me to crack. The longer I stood there, the more I began to realize how completely I was at his mercy. No way out. No way to fight back. Just the cold, hard reality that I was trapped in the most horrifying game of hide and seek I could ever imagine. I sucked in a breath, willing myself to stay quiet. The air in the room was thick, heavy, stinking of mildew and fear. I could smell the rot from the pile of discarded clothing behind me. There had to be something in here I could use. I needed to move. But every nerve in my body screamed against it. I couldn't risk making a noise. He knows I'm in here. I was sure of it now. I could feel his presence pressing against the door, like he was right there, just waiting for me to make the wrong move. The way he'd moved, the way he'd stalked me from the moment I'd noticed him, it was all part of a game to him. His game. Another tap. A soft sound. Barely audible. You're not alone, you know. The words cut through the silence, and I froze. It was a whisper at first, barely a sound, but as I stood there, his voice crept closer, a sickening, low hum that crawled beneath my skin. "The others, they're still here. You think you're the first? Think you're the only one who got away? There's been so many. Just like you." His voice was changing. It was slipping. Not quite human, but not quite anything else either. I felt my throat close up, panic rising in my chest. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I was going to suffocate in here, either from fear or from the claustrophobia of this horrible room. But you're different. You ran. That makes this more fun. He was toying with me. I knew it now. Every second he waited, he was toying with me, savoring it, like a hunter letting his prey run just far enough before the final strike. I couldn't take it anymore. The silence was worse than anything. His words. His presence. I had to do something. I spun around, eyes wild, scanning the room for anything. A weapon. A way to escape. The broken desk, the rusted shelves, they were useless. Then, something caught my eye. A metal rod sticking out from beneath the pile of clothes. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed it, my hands shaking, the metal cold against my palms. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Better than just standing there waiting for him to finish his game. I turned back to the door, bracing myself for whatever came next. There was another tap. Then a whisper so close I could almost feel it on my skin. "You can run. You can fight. But I always catch up." The door rattled. I could hear him. He was coming. That I felt the door rattle again, but this time, it wasn't just the sound of it banging against the frame, it was the force behind it. The air seemed to shift, and my skin crawled, as if the walls themselves were pushing in around me. The room felt smaller, suffocating. I couldn't breathe. I gripped the metal rod so tightly my fingers ached, the cold steel digging into my palms. My heart pounded in my chest, and my eyes darted around the room. There was nowhere to go. Nowhere to hide. This was it. The door creaked. Then, crack. A sickening sound, like the wood splitting under too much pressure. The door was giving way. I staggered backward, my legs trembling, and pressed my back into the corner of the room. The pile of discarded clothes, the rotten smell, it was all closing in on me. This was it. I was going to die in this godforsaken place. I tried to swallow, but my throat was too dry. Every breath felt like it was getting harder to take. My thoughts were spiraling out of control. How had this happened? Why had I chosen tonight to go for a run? Why hadn't I listened to that feeling in my gut that something wasn't right? I was starting to feel numb, like my body was disconnecting from my mind. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind nothing but terror. Then, he spoke again. "It's over now." His voice was so close. Too close. It made my whole body go cold. He was standing on the other side of the door, only a few inches away. I could almost hear his breath, shallow and raspy, as he waited for me to make the first move. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. The door rattled again. This time, it didn't stop. Bang! The door was forced open with a sickening screech. I raised the metal rod in front of me, my hand shaking uncontrollably, but I couldn't even look. I couldn't bear to see his face again, that grin stretching wider, the eyes that were too dark, too empty. I heard his footsteps, slow, heavy, dragging as he stepped into the room. He was in the doorway, but I couldn't see him, not yet. "You're going to run again, aren't you?" His voice was a whisper now, almost gentle. Sickly gentle. I couldn't answer. The words stuck in my throat. Then, I heard it. A sound that made my blood freeze. A whisper of movement. Not from him. But from behind me. My heart stopped. I turned just in time to see something emerge from the shadows of the room, a figure, slumped and stumbling forward, barely able to stand. The same figure I had seen earlier. The one on the floor. The one who had barely been alive. He was standing now. I had no time to react. The figure lurched forward, its hands reaching toward me, but it wasn't coming for me. It was coming for him. The man, the one who had been chasing me, who had been playing with me, stumbled back, eyes wide with shock as the figure lunged at him. A desperate, animalistic grunt tore from his throat as the thing grabbed him, sinking its teeth into his neck. I screamed. I didn't know if it was out of fear or relief, but I couldn't stop. I watched in horror as the man I had feared, the man who had been hunting me, was dragged to the ground by something worse. The sound of flesh tearing, of muffled screams, filled the room. It was like a nightmare, a blur of dark shapes and twisted bodies. I was frozen. I couldn't move. Couldn't look away. Then, as quickly as it had started, the noise stopped. The room fell silent. I stood there, trembling, staring at the darkness. After a long moment, I gathered the strength to move. My legs were shaky, barely able to hold me up as I stumbled toward the open door. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. I ran. I ran like I had never run before, pushing my body past its limits, ignoring the pain in my chest, the tears in my eyes. I didn't stop until I was out of the building, out of the night. When I finally reached the safety of the streetlights, I collapsed to my knees, gasping for air. It was over. But I couldn't forget. The thing that had been chasing me. It wasn't human. Neither was the thing it had been hunting. And the worst part? I knew they were still out there. Waiting for the next runner to make the mistake I had.